We have all made the point that the personnel issues were not the focus of our discussions yesterday and today, but that we wanted to focus on what was so important that has been little attended to, the content, which is so important for the citizens of all our countries. I have made a few comments on personnel issues in Germany, and I can repeat that here. I made the point that for me, Jean-Claude Juncker is the candidate for the office of the President of the Commission, and that I want him as the President of the Commission. I made that statement in Germany. I can repeat it here, but that has not been the main focus of our discussions here. So I don't want to speculate about hypothetical situations. We didn't do that, and thus I cannot respond.
Well, what I'd say is that we're here to discuss the policies and the approach that we think that the Commission should take over the next 5 years. That's what the discussions have really been about, rather than people. I mean, obviously, you need people that are able to carry out those policies and that approach. And there's also, as I said yesterday, and I've said before, there's an important principle here, which is the rules of the European Union, is that the European Council, the body of the elected national leaders, should come together and recommend a candidate. And I don't think that process should change.
Well, the question has been addressed to David, but I'd like to briefly comment, if I may. I made myself clear by saying that I am for Jean-Claude Juncker, but when I made that statement in Germany, I also made the point that we act in a European spirit. We always do that, because otherwise you would never reach a compromise. Thus, we cannot just consign to the back burner the question of the European spirit. You know, threats are not part and parcel of that spirit. That's not part of the way in which we usually proceed. Now, as concerns the question of the Parliament and the European Parliament and the European Council, everybody in the European Union, in the European Council, is in favour, strongly in favour of us adhering to the right procedures. The Parliament has increased its powers, but the situation is very clear here on the basis of the treaties. And the European Parliament too has to abide by the treaties, which say that the Council of the Heads of Government submits a proposal. And the heads of governments are quite aware in submitting that proposal that the Parliament would then have to take a majority decision on that proposal. 260 votes on the decision. We thus are aware that we cannot move things on our own, but the European Parliament too finds itself in a situation where it knows that they too cannot act on their own. They know that the Council has to make a proposal, and if we are well advised, we respect each other as different and independent institutions. Threats would be the wrong means to be used here, but the Council is quite aware of the fact that it will, at the end of the day, need to have the votes of the Parliament. And this is why we keep in touch and talk to each other.
In terms of answering your question, I have a very straightforward approach, which is I want Britain to stay in a reformed European Union. That is my goal. That is what I think is best for Britain, and I think it's best for Europe as well. Now, the decision about whether to stay in Europe or to leave Europe will be for the British people in a referendum by the end of 2017. And obviously the approach that the European Union takes between now and then will be very important. If we can achieve reforms, if we can demonstrate openness, competitiveness, flexibility, less interference, reform, people that are capable of taking the European Union forward in that direction, that will be helpful. And obviously if the European Union doesn't go in that direction, that will be unhelpful. I think it is very plain, very obvious. Just on the question of the Spitzenkandidat, obviously there were no such candidates in Britain. There is no legitimacy for that process in Britain. And obviously, as I've said, I believe that the European Council has the job as the elected heads of state and government to come together and to recommend candidates that are capable of carrying forward the reform programme that is necessary in Europe.